I think one thing that's interesting about your book, Bill, is that, like, essentially the second half is what should we do about, like, how to respond to these. And I think that's another tricky thing that comes up. Like, we've talked a little bit about the government response. What about the private sector or individual Americans? What should the response be there?
Well, corporations have not taken their data seriously, protecting it seriously. Here's the thought process that goes on in the boardroom. I'd say this 95 or 90 more percent of American companies think this way. Okay, we have data systems here, and how much money do we want to spend this year on protecting them? So the chief technology officer says, or chief information officer says, we got to spend this much money. The board and the CEO says, no, we can't spend that much money. Well, but that means these systems are vulnerable. Well, so the management says and boards say, well, let's bring in an insurance company in, and let's bring in a cybersecurity company like Mandiant or CrowdStrike, and let's hire lawyers. And so that if in fact there is a breach, the insurance companies will pay for it. We're not going to pay for it. So therefore, it's cheaper to pay for insurance policies and lawyers and cyber consultants than it is to spend the millions of dollars it would take to genuinely protect their systems. So the private sector knows that their systems are not secure, and because they want to make money every quarter and want to increase their earnings every quarter, are reluctant to spend the money that it would take. I mean, that's just one glaring omission. The other glaring problem is that our software industry, the way you write a software program, you may write, let's say, 10,000 or 20,000 lines of code, but then you borrow code from GitHub and other repositories that do repetitive things that someone else has figured out how to do. Like Log4j was login technology. You enter this word and the password and the user ID and password, and you're in. So you package your proprietary software with software that you've borrowed from these open repositories, and then you sell that. You package that all together, and then you sell that. But you don't know whether there are any known vulnerabilities in software that you've borrowed. So and you don't care. I mean, there's no one is promising, no one is demanding that you guarantee that you're delivering vulnerability-free software. We don't do that. People are buying software without demanding that it be vulnerability-free. So the way our private sector thinks and operates makes them vulnerable.
You also mentioned some things about kind of the issue of manufacturing in China and trying to bring manufacturing back to the US, and the semiconductor industry as an interesting case study.
Very well. So Americans still design the most sophisticated chips, Qualcomm, for example, and we have the software that allows these very sophisticated chips to be designed. That comes from Cadence, CADENCE, another California company. And so we have the lithography tools. We have ASML in the Netherlands is one of the world's most sophisticated when it comes to making the lithography equipment that can be used to make the most sophisticated chips. But so we have these tools and the knowledge, but the Taiwanese and South Koreans are leading the way in actually manufacturing these chips. And so the Chinese are getting involved in packaging the chips, and they're getting in at the lower end of the spectrum of sophistication. So what we're trying to do as a result of the CHIPS Act is bring more of the manufacturing back to the United States so that we can develop and own and control the very advanced, most advanced semiconductor manufacturing, and it won't leak out to the Chinese. So this is one of the most ambitious experiments in human history to try to prevent a nation state as sophisticated and as wealthy as China from developing a critical industry. So it's a great experiment. The voices against it argue that, well, this will only accelerate the Chinese efforts to develop their own sophisticated semiconductors, And they announced proudly when Gina Raimondo was there that Huawei had built a new 5G cell phone using a sophisticated chip. There's still some doubt about whether that was purely a Chinese chip or was it using some American tools or American components that had been obtained through third parties. But I think we have to try. I don't think we can simply sit by and wait for the Chinese to develop sophisticated chip technology that would fuel their AI and quantum computing initiatives. We have to, I believe, try to manage the situation.
It's interesting what you talked about, the need for consumer electronics to come back to the U.S. too for
Right.
manufacturing, not just the semiconductors. Could you kind of explain what the relationship there is?
Well, there's again a very complex can of worms, but if we have American manufacturing of semiconductors happening here on our soil, we don't want them to send those chips to East Asia to be packaged and to be incorporated into electronic devices, and then have those devices sold back to us. Wouldn't it be more efficient and safer from a national security point of view if we actually made more of our own consumer electronics? Right now, all of our consumer electronics essentially is either manufactured in China or has componentry from China. So that it's a critical vulnerability. So there are multiple reasons we should do it, because it's more efficient and it would support these semiconductor plants that we're building, but also it would reduce the ability of the Chinese to penetrate our systems.
And, this is kind of an interesting fusion of how do you get private sector companies to care about national security issues, right? Because, I'm sure there are a lot of companies that did not like the CHIPS Act that wanted to sell these advanced semiconductors or the equipment to manufacture them to China. So how do you negotiate that? Does it always have to be like the U.S. government stepping in and saying that's not allowed?
Well, you're asking one of the big questions. I mean, CEOs still believe in the religion of globalization. They believe that they are their responsibility is to go anywhere in the world, sell anything that they can sell, and maximize their profitability everywhere in the world, so that they can drive up their share price and PS also drive up their personal compensation, and that they have no responsibility for national security. I mean, this is a religion that entire generations of American CEOs have embraced. How do you break through that? Well, I think maybe there may be some sticks involved, but I also think that there should be some carrots involved. That an American president or American leader needs to have a very heart-to-heart conversation with the heads of some of these companies and say, "Hey, we're getting taken apart here. We're losing because we're not playing on the same team." So the sticks could be penalties if we find that a particular sensitive technology is being used by the PLA, then there could be a fine, or there could be some sort of humiliation in public. But I think it has to be a combination of sticks and carrots, because I don't think at the end of the day the American government can force all these technology giants and other private sector entities to simply obey the national security dictates.
I wonder also if there's a way to kind of incentivize, like you're talking about carrots, right? Like, I'm surprised that, Meta, who owns Instagram, which is a direct competitor of TikTok, isn't in support of like, oh, hey,
let's ban TikTok.
Let's, TikTok has national security. I mean, I don't know if they would come out and say let's ban it, because I don't think they don't want the U.S. government to be able to someday say let's ban Instagram. But like, the idea that like national security is a concern, et cetera, I'm surprised that they're not kind of trumpeting the whole like we're made in the U.S. kind of angle.
They're making billions of dollars a year from Chinese advertising on Facebook, so they don't want to be caught being overtly anti-Chinese, because they would hurt their revenue. It would hurt Mark Zuckerberg's portfolio. So their CEOs right now are dealing with very complex challenges. They want to resist, if they can, resist Chinese penetration, but they don't want to go so far as to anger the Chinese, because that would threaten their sales in China. So they're in a very tough spot.
All they have to do is secretly fund activist groups that oppose TikTok.
Uh-huh.
Well, I don't think that Well, the thing is, it is going to always be a losing game for them in China. Like ultimately, the CCP is always going to come down on the side of TikTok and ByteDance, which they can control. They're not going to let Instagram into China. Like that's
No,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
This is one of the truly historic situations where our companies have deeply ensconced themselves into the fabric of the Chinese economy, and our economy also is deeply dependent on China. You go into Home Depot or Walmart, pick it up. Where's it made? China, China, China. So it's taken us decades to create this globalization model where two largest economies on the planet are deeply interpenetrated. So how do we unwind that or de-risk that, or how do we move forward in an era where we don't really trust the Chinese Communist Party is an issue of historic proportions. I hope I live long enough to see how it plays out.
Yeah, the whole idea was that this would prevent war, but it just created a different type of war.
Right, exactly right.
Well, after listening to you today, I think I've decided to become a Luddite. That is the solution.
Yeah, I don't think we should have anything to do with social media, Chris. Certainly not have an entire company based on producing YouTube videos.
The internet was a mistake. That's all I'm saying.
Amish Uncovered. That'll be our show, but it won't be on
shouting
TV.
on street corners.
Yeah.
There we go. That's
They go back to the original way of political communication.
We'll become prophets. Perfect.
How do you feel about horseshoes?
It's a gray zone. It's a little too technology heavy for me.
Right.
Well, Bill, thank you so much for joining us. Once again, the book is Battlefield Cyber, How China and Russia Are Undermining Our Democracy and National Security. We'll put a link below so people can check it out, hopefully pick up a copy and get interested in this very important topic.
I mean, I think it was a fascinating book, especially since I think a lot of times we talk about these things that are like, it seems like insurmountable almost. And I find that you guys have had like very specific and concrete suggestions for ways to, respond to the issue that seems like almost insurmountable. So I think that was a great part of the book.
Thank you. So go on Amazon and give us a 5-star review and tell the world what you think.
And is there anywhere else people can follow you?
Well, my website is williamjholstein.com, my full name.com. I'm on LinkedIn, very active on LinkedIn. And so I'm not active on Facebook at all, though. Sorry.
How about TikTok, WeChat?
I'm not on TikTok. I do have an X account, a Twitter account, but I can't quite figure out where that story is going. So I'm hearing from people that they're finding Twitter to be less useful than it used to be, that the new ownership is beginning to change it in ways that it's not as much fun. There's not as much thrill to it.
I mean, you can't beat TikTok for fun. That's all I'm saying. Well, Bill, thanks for joining us.
I've never so much as looked at an image of TikTok because I'm concerned that it would capture my phone. The application would get into my phone. So I'm very concerned about looking at TikTok images.
Yeah, to be clear, I would recommend no one have TikTok anywhere near their phone. Don't download it. Don't watch a video. It is bad news, as you've made it very clear.
Thank you so much for the time today. I appreciate your interest and your level of knowledge about what's in the book, and that's just great. So let's go sell some books.
Yes. Yeah, the challenge really is to get Americans interested in this. I think we'll title the episode "Top 10 TikTok Dances to Do While Eating Tide Pods." They'll love that. They'll eat it up.
Will that work for us?
I don't know. We can try. That's all we can do.
We can
try
to.
But yeah, the fact that there's just so little being, like, there's no one in charge of this. Like, the cyber force idea is really interesting. I mean, yeah, we need some kind of superhuman samurai cyber squad
cyber with an S.
This. Cyber with an S.
Oh my gosh!
I've been waiting an hour to use that.
I didn't think about. I forgot about that show, but I think we used it in some China Uncensored episode or something.
We've used it at some point.
But I hadn't thought about that show, and that's a deep cut. I feel like
That's still how I understand computers.
Is that like they're little monsters that look kind of like dinosaurs?
Well, those are the viruses.
The viruses.
That and Reboot shaped how I understand technology.
I never saw Reboot, but I did watch Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, which I don't know what that says about me. But
I'd be interested in knowing what our viewers were influenced by growing up in terms of how they think about computing. So, like, leave your comments below. That'd be kind of cool.
There's going to be a huge generational divide here.
I know, but it'll be interesting to see.
I'll definitely check that out.
Yes.